AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Brett Johnson with you here on a Tuesday afternoon. And today we are joined by someone from the Minnesota Reformer, not Patrick Coolican. We have someone filling in from today, and that is the great Deena Winter, who, of course, we have spoken to a couple of times on the show, as we have a lot of news to talk about today, including MyPillow being evicted from their building in Chaska. We'll also be talking about some news and the legislature, so lots to get to today here with Deena Winter of the Minnesota Reformer. Deena, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I got to start off talking about, well, someone you're very familiar with and have reported on him many times throughout the past, and that is the CEO of MyPillow, Mike Lindell, who, of course, is also someone who has peddled many election-related conspiracy theories going back to 2020. But here's what's happening with Mike Lindell. The landlord of the building that houses MyPillow in Chaska is evicting the company after MyPillow fell behind by about $200,000 or 2 months of rent right now. So why exactly, Deena, did this Delaware-based company called First Industrial decide to evict Lindell? Was there basically no hope of repayment? Were they kind of looking at this as a last resort? What reasonings were they giving for why they decided to finally pull the trigger and evict MyPillow from this building?
Well, according to the Star Tribune story, they're saying that they had given them at least 4 default notices since September for this warehouse in Shakopee, and he was behind by over $200,000 in rent. Although I might add that it appears that this is not the warehouse. When I spent time with him a few months ago, he has a Shakopee warehouse, but it appears he has 2 of them. Mm-hmm. And the big one where they're doing, producing all these products and they have a little outlet store, that's where I was with him. That does not appear to be the one that is getting evicted. So just to be clear, I don't think it's like they're shutting him down anytime soon, because as far as I didn't even know he was still using this other warehouse in Shakopee, but that appears to be the one that's getting evicted.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go, because as I saw in the article, he does have that second facility down in Shakopee, and as you stated, that's where you spent the bulk of your, or at least all of your time, I believe, with him when you had a chance to spend a day with Mike Lindell. Do we know anything about the financial status of the building that they're renting in Shakopee? Are they falling behind on payments there too, or is that something we just don't quite know right now, or maybe we won't find out until they are actually behind on their payments? Similar to what's happening.
I haven't heard anything about the other one, and I'm assuming if there was anything going on with that one, they would have reported it also. The first day I was with him, we spent at the headquarters, which is in former bank building by Chaska, in Chaska. I think it's within the city limits. And then they have their warehouse where they're actually making all these products. They have in Shakopee. So someone asked me, "Oh my God, are they going to go out of business tomorrow?" And it's like, I texted Mike. He hasn't replied, which is very unusual for him. Mm-hmm. But so I asked him, about it. But I don't think it's like they're going out of business anytime soon. So, if they were behind on that building, that would seem to be a major problem.
Yeah, as you stated, that's where they have the bulk of their operations is out of that Shakopee facility. It sounds like they really weren't doing too much out of this Chaska facility anymore, so you'd even wonder maybe they weren't going to renew their lease anyways and decided to just take the eviction anyways, which I know doesn't necessarily help your company's credit, but if they weren't doing much in Chaska, I suppose this probably wasn't too much of a surprise.
Well, the Chaska, that's the headquarters.
I
that's
gotcha.
Like where all his offices are, and that's not the one they're talking about either. They're talking about, so there are 2 warehouses in Shakopee. Mm-hmm. I just don't know what was going on in this one where he's getting evicted, because we were in the other one, which is just a huge warehouse where they're making pillows and then all kinds of other products now too. And that is not the one that's getting evicted.
Gotcha. Glad you clarified that, because that is important to point out. They're not getting evicted from their headquarters. It's this second facility down in Shakopee. But at least given your interactions with Mike Lindell over the past few months and years, and the fact that you had a chance to spend a lot of time with him and seeing how he kind of runs his operation on a day-to-day basis. At least from what I read in your article a few months ago, he has a very haphazard style way, I guess, of deciding to pay bills. So overall, this probably isn't too surprising, just given all the financial stress that he's under and the fact that, he, as I was kind of mentioning, has his very own sort of odd way of deciding how to pay bills, where it basically just says, pay that, don't pay that, pay that, don't pay that.
Yeah, I remember when I was out there, I was just kind of trying to be a fly on the wall, and pretty early on in the day, he was on a phone call with it seemed to be a guy that helps pay the bills or something, and he would be like, well, what about this, and when is that due, and okay, pay that one, and kind of put this one off. So it was really clear that he was, really deciding which bills to pay is the way it definitely came across, and was under some financial pressure for sure. But then you'd talk to him, one minute you'd be saying he's broke, all he's got left is his pickup, and then the next minute, he's making a phone call, scheduling flights to Texas, dropping his wife off in Texas, going on to Florida, and it's clear he's still using a private jet. So it's like, and I asked him about it. He said, "Well, it's a leased jet. It's always been leased, but I mean, still, So I was never quite sure how broke, what his financial situation is. But I think it's becoming pretty clear, and that's why I wanted to do the story. Really, was to see what's going on with him as things are really beginning to start. I really think the future of the company was at stake when I went out there, and I wanted to see what was going on and how he was dealing with it.
Yeah, and that guy and a lot of other people, no matter what you think about his politics, don't want to see a company like MyPillow end up going under, because that would certainly be a lot of people who would potentially get unemployed in that situation. So I don't think anyone wants to see that, and we'll have to see what happens with MyPillow and their future. We are recording this at about 2:30 in the afternoon here on Tuesday, and as you said, Mike Lindell has not texted you yet, but that could be just more reason to make sure you follow MinnesotaReformer.com, because I'm sure you'll have something once we know a little bit more about what's happening with Mike Lindell. Maybe he'll respond and we can learn a little bit more, because, this is certainly kind of a development that came out of nowhere and is rather surprising, but as you said, probably won't necessarily put them out of business, but could be a big hindrance to their business.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of employees out there. I forget. It seems like he's trying to remember how many he said he had. I feel like it was a couple thousand maybe, but yeah, it's a lot of people that work out there in Shakopee, and in Chaska. So certainly, that is that's why I wanted to. I think it's important, his decision to really get so involved with politics and elections has really made had a huge impact on that company.
We read more about that coming up at MinnesotaReformer.com, MinnesotaReformer.com. And make sure you go back in the archives and check out that article where Deena was able to spend a day with Mike Lindell, kind of learning about how he does his business and kind of being just a fly on the wall. I want to move on to one other story that you worked on, and this has to do with Republicans accusing DFLers of an unprecedented attack on religious groups. So what's happened is that religious leaders from a range of faiths are trying to convince the Minnesota State Legislature to restore an exemption in the Minnesota Human Rights Act that protects religious organizations and schools against claims of gender identity-based discrimination. The religious groups and schools want to be able to hire people who adhere to their beliefs, which in other words means they want to be able to forego hiring trans people without the threat of civil rights litigation. So current law allows a church to discriminate against a gay applicant but not a trans applicant, and Republicans thought this was an oversight in the Minnesota Human Rights Act and how that was amended during the last session. But the DFL said it was not an exemption, or it was not an oversight. And so I'm curious, how have lawmakers and the political parties responded to these pleas from religious organizations and schools saying that we need to have this exemption restored back in the Minnesota Human Rights Act, because this is kind of a wide range of religious groups that came together on this issue?
Yeah, they have not gotten a very good reception. They had a hearing a House hearing, I think it was February 29th, and the Republicans were pretty adamant that this was just an attack on religion and the foundation of our country and the First Amendment and so on, and very passionate about that. And the Democrats on that committee, said, actually the chair of the committee, Jamie Becker-Finn, Representative Becker-Finn, said it was not an oversight, that she was aware of that last session. And the Democrats on that committee were just really offended by the comments that the testifiers made about, LGBTQ people and their feeling that because of religious beliefs they should have the right to decide, whether to hire them and so on. And there was Minnesota's first out trans lawmaker, Representative Ray Finke, was on the committee, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but and also Representative Brian Curran was also on the committee and was very visibly upset by the testimony and said it was disgusting, infuriating, disrespectful, and a direct attack on trans and non-binary people, and felt like just really felt like it was an attack on some of the lawmakers on the committee. So it was just really high tension and passion on both sides. And then in the Senate, they didn't get to the bill until 1 a.m. last week, and but it was rejected in both committees along party lines. So and then yesterday the Republicans in the House tried again to get this addressed on the floor with no success. So I suppose it's possible maybe they'll consider this, but it doesn't look good so far for the Republicans.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go next, because we have seen Republicans successfully be able to create some wedge issues at the state legislature, I think chief among them being the school resource officer bill. So I think people who may have been watching this from a political standpoint thought, well, could this bill or could this issue become the next SRO kind of thing that trips up DFLers? But at least from what I'm reading and the interactions we've been seeing over the past few days with DFLers responding to these claims from religious organizations and Republicans, they're not going to budge on this very much. So at least in terms of the future, at least in my eyes, this does not look likely that they are going to really be budging and trying to restore this religious exemption, correct?
No, it doesn't look like it to me. I mean, I think I read somewhere else where someone was quoted in the party saying that they'll continue talking. But I certainly in those committees anyway, and on the floor of the House there was not. But yes, the Republicans, especially Representative Harry Niska, have really been pushing and trying to get this out into the press, and Niska put out multiple press releases and finally, they held a press conference yesterday. I was already working on a story by then, but trying to get more attention on this issue because it is something that they have a good number of lawmakers at their press conference. And I do suspect we'll be hearing more about this as the elections come into focus.
And final question or topic on this has to do with, well, what could be happening next in terms of legal challenges? Because as I understand it, a number of these religious groups think they could have some standing to at least challenge this legally in the court system and possibly get this overturned or at least get that exemption reinstated. Have there been any words or rumblings on what they might be doing legally, or has this largely kind of just been chatter thus far?
The General Counsel for True North Legal, which represents religious groups, said, that they're going to have a bunch of lawsuits. That they kind of make it sound like they're really. I mean, it's very obvious because the United States Supreme Court had ruled in a case that the government in 2020 the government cannot control religious schools' hiring decisions. So they don't really understand why lawmakers are just going to leave this alone and let these lawsuits play out, I guess. So I imagine, and I know Niska had mentioned there was already one case at the State Human Rights Department. So that is involving a hiring decision involving gender identity. So I guess we shall see if anything changes, but they promise to sue.
Well, like I mentioned, this is something that Republicans are trying to turn into a wedge issue. So if you want to get a little background on this, since this could potentially become a political issue over the next few weeks and months, make sure you read Deena's article on this over at MinnesotaReformer.com titled Republicans Accuse the DFL of Unprecedented Attack on Religious Groups. Make sure you check that out, as well as her great reporting on Mike Lindell, especially given the fact that his company is being evicted from one of their Shakopee facilities. Again, MinnesotaReformer.com. We have been speaking with Deena Winter, who is with the Minnesota Reformer. Again, the website, one more time, MinnesotaReformer.com. Hey, Deena, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Anytime.
All right, let's take a break and turn things back over to Matt McNeil on AM 950.
Take a ride on your disco stick.